All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Prime View 2019. Please help me welcome our host of the Prime View. Help me welcome Marcella.
All right, amen. Amen. That's a
How you doing?
That's it. All right.
There you go.
Welcome, welcome. Can you guys believe it? This is our 4th year at Prime View. I am Eddie. I am Eddie, your host for tonight.
My name is Marcella. So happy to be here with all of you.
My name is Kyle. Equally overjoyed to be here, seeing as I missed it last year. So I'm going to make up everything that I missed and soak it all up, and I'm super happy to be here.
Reggie White, happy to be here again.
Adrienne, and of course, I'm happy to be here as usual.
All right.
As you all know, the theme for this year is taking the lead. What are some of the wow moments that happen within the conference that we can share with some of the viewers that maybe was not at the conference, that, you know, a takeaway that they can take from what you got?
Something I can say that I took away from the conference so far from the speakers was God is not concerned about your abilities, more so he's concerned about your availability. So often we put God on the back end of what we have to do when we prioritize everything else. I'm going to do, I'm going to go do laundry, I'm going to do my homework, I'm going to take care of the babies, and then I'm going to pray 5 minutes before, and read my Bible 5 minutes before I go to bed. And when you crack that Bible, that's sleep. So how good do we prioritize our time in giving God what he needs from us and still expect so much from him? You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the big wow moments I can say for me.
I think one of the takeaways that I've gotten is that our plans, but God's purpose. Or sometimes our plan would take us in directions that God is not really having a purpose for. So, I think we see that a lot in our generation. That everybody makes plans for everything, but has no purpose for anything that they're making any plans for. Don't we see that a lot more in our generation, and how so?
We don't talk with God first about things. It's like we make a plan for our life, write everything down, and never once until, like she was saying, we get on the road and it's like, oh, we didn't pray yet. It's like, did we even ask God if we should be going?
If we can go.
Right. So, and that's something certainly that I've noticed, at least in our generation. I don't know where the mix-up in communication has been, but I know with my parents, it was steady praying and wake up in the morning, mama down there snotting, everything like that, but it was like real. And then I don't really see that in our generation anymore. It's just kind of.
I think if we could text a prayer, we would, to God.
Listen.
I'm just saying.
It's an app for that.
I'll say this as far as the to piggyback on what you were saying is the kind of we don't take our plans before God. We ask him to ordain and to make ways, and then we have a lot of people who have frustrated faith because they beg and they petition God, let this happen, I'm taking the lead, I'm doing this, but it's an aspect of taking the lead still in submission to God. So I think oftentimes we've seen now the results of that. So we see a lot of people with frustrated faith, like, I wanted to start this and God didn't let it happen. No, God didn't tell you to do that. It wasn't in his will. You can't presuppose the will of God and then tell him to slap a signature on whatever you come up with.
One of the biggest things I took from it is the time is now to lead. You know what I mean? Especially in this day and age we live in. You know, nobody needs a pat on the back to say, okay, Reggie, go do that in leading. And not leading just in a pulpit, in a high place to be popular, but leading in our circles, in our individual circles, at our jobs, at our schools, wherever it is, leading as an example of Jesus Christ. In today's age, we need an example. Amen. The world needs an example, I should say. And that's one of the things that I believe as Christians we have to do.
Well, as we wrap it up, we're going to have the men of the group. We're going to come back up to the table, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the men's stuff. So thank you, and join us back after this brief commercial.
Just so you guys know, this is real coffee. I just had to make that point. This is real coffee. Real deal of real minutes. This is water.
If you want to go, then lift up your hands. You will get this feeling that you can't understand.
Welcome back. This is the Male's View. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we as men has faced, or we as men have seen. We as men have seen the changes in our congregation that kind of changes certain things. And one of the questions is, why is there such shortage of events that are geared towards men in church?
I think for one, men just don't like to be vulnerable. You know what I mean? At church, you have to talk to people. Sometimes you might have to cry. You have to worship God. Men don't like to express themselves, so it's very difficult at times, especially if they're going through something. And, you know, I guess when you hear about church, you always hear about the church mother, you don't hear about the church father. It's just that stigma in society that you have a church mother, but what about the church father, you know what I mean, and that elder in your church? So I think it's just a stigma that we kind of got to take back, you know what I mean, and we got to get back to the Word of God.
Well, as serving, there's a couple things that I think I've seen, and there's a lot of the men that was in the ministry while I was doing it. It was just so few of them. It was just like, here's the pastor, here's the deacon, and then everybody else is just men.
Big drop off.
Big drop off. Like there's nothing in the middle. And then it's, no matter how many times you try to involve them in men group and we're doing this, it just always seems that sometimes they're just not there. You know what I mean? So it's more like a work, and like you said, I think vulnerability has a lot to do with it. So some of the men just don't feel like they need to open up, because in my generation, see, I'm from another culture. So my culture, we were not to cry. Like you can't show that you are weak. You can't show that there's something going on. Like everything is supposed to be just all right. You know.
Yeah, I would say a lot of, and I think this is probably going to go right into this next question because it's so tied together. I think the lack of events for men is directly correlated to the lack of men in leadership. So yeah, like you said, you have the pastor, executive pastor, your preaching pastor, whatever the offices of the church are, and unfortunately, a lot of denominations and a lot of people, some people are against women in leadership and raising a certain point. So what you have is you have a few men and not cultivating an environment. And frankly, to why what I've seen and what I've read and what I've heard is even looking at the breakdown of church. So Pew Research, it's an organization, they do research on things related to church and religion, and they broke down like 64%
of women go to church as opposed to the 36 or whatever of the men. And when you look at this, it's like, okay, why is there such a lack of men? Just like you said, when you say the church mother, don't we know that the Orthodox Christian church that we are, were founded by men? It was the church fathers who sat down in councils and reasoned with each other. And I think the reason why we're seeing this decay, and what I've read, and not even of any revelation of myself, but you see it, is we preach feminine Jesus. No man is going to want to follow the pretty flower in the hair, hugging children Jesus. Jesus flipped tables. Jesus was a carpenter. So when you look at the text, you see Jesus wasn't no skinny little, never had a paper cut. This was the man's man. But we don't get it preached like that. So you see other denominations and other religions that are a lot more masculine, and that preach on brotherhood and things like that. They're drafting men in hundreds. The Israelite, the Jewish, and those in the religion of Judaism, and even the Muslims, and even some now, and this is the unfortunate thing, is you see now improper sects of Christianity. So you have like the Hebrew Black Israelites, right? Black Hebrew Israelites, who are now coming and they're getting these men and they're drawing men. Why? Because they're preaching an aggression. And it's not that men need to be aggressive. We gotta punch men in the chest for them to love Jesus. But when we teach the whole gospel, when we teach the whole set of who Jesus was, listen, you can love Jesus and you could be in worship hands crossed. Worship doesn't mean sobbing and hands lifted and everything like. There's an expression for manly worship modeled after Jesus. So I think once we get back to, once we model and intentionally show the man, what it meant, the different aspects of a man. I think of Jacob and Esau. So one was an outside guy, one was an inside guy. We're teaching, we're preaching, and we're doing all these things to inside guys. And the outside, the alpha males are outside like, I don't want to be a part of that. I have no part. So when the men don't come, then we see the lack of events.
Why are there such few men in church?
I would say too, it's a lack of responsibility. It's in society too. It doesn't start at the church. It starts at the home. That's what the Bible says. And I think men are going away from their responsibility as being the priest, the provider of their household, and the protector. And when you're absent from the household, why would you want to go to church? You're not in the house, so you're not going to be in the church body. A lot of people are ashamed too because they haven't taken care of their responsibilities, and they know if they go into the house of God, that way they're going to be convicted of their lack of responsibility. Unfortunately.
I think there's such few men as well, because I think, like you said, I think roles are changing a little bit, kind of like to piggyback on what he's saying, roles are changing. So as we see society change, roles are changing. So for example, I was doing a teaching with my son, and we were talking, and we were looking at different dance moves and things. And a lot of those dance moves, I said, do you know that those dance moves were for female that you guys are doing? So a lot of the things that were different are now changing, and now female are doing the male dance, and a man are doing the, and it changes for songs, and it changes for everything, and we kind of see that same impact in church, where it kind of piggybacks on exactly a little bit of what you were saying. I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, I would just say also the what's perpetrated. So what we see, what's huge? When you think of Christianity, when you think of American Christianity, what's huge? You see huge, mega churches. There's nothing wrong with big sizes. There's nothing wrong with having numbers and having impact and reach. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you see what's perpetrated as Christianity, is this guy up there who you may not know everything about. So now you have pastors like John Gray. He buys his wife a car. Now everybody on all social media platforms said, see, look at that guy, the pastor, all he wants is your money. Those guys in church, they're just a bunch of tricksters. So it's what, now we don't know the ins and outs and all the details of whatever, that's his personal finances, that's whatever. But when you see things like that, that are glorified, as opposed to, and I holistically believe that this is the attack, it's the strategic attack of the enemy to make men also, first of all, like you said, absent in the house, subsequently absent in the church. So now, whoever's there, there's no checks and balances. So if a guy's up there and he's, pimping out the congregation, and that's what the world thinks, That's what unbelievers are going to see, and they're not going to want to join something that they think is corrupt.
And I think he does such a great job too at just, bringing things to the forefront and making people basically, what I'm saying is, there's a lot of people that comes to my job and they say, well, why do I need to go to church if all they talk about is offering and all they talk about is money and all they talk about is this, and then the pastor's the one that's doing the worst things, and the pastor's doing this, and then he's giving me the example of Eddy. So I think what we need to do is maybe stick a little bit with our pastors, because what happened is the congregation was pretty much crucifying them at the same time, and they're saying, okay, well, the congregation is not even behind them. So sometimes I think it kind of goes with us too. With the men is not even sticking with the men, and they're saying, why do you need me in there for?
And sometimes, so I would 100% agree with that. We need to stick and support our local pastors, but then we have to also stand up for wrong is wrong.
Absolutely.
And I feel like when the people see that
Absolutely.
wrong is going on, and they say, wow, there's no guys over there to check that, I don't want to be a part of
That's
that.
what it is. The society is dictating what a man is nowadays too, and we have to stand up and show that men lead
Redefine it.
example.
They're
All of
redefining
it,
it.
from the masculinity to what the Bible says, not toxic masculinity, what they're saying today, but just show them that it's not intimidating. It's just what God intended us.
It's okay to be a man
okay.
as created by God and to have your own emotions. Love Jesus and be saved.
Now we could go on and on and on about this, but we got to wrap this up because we got to move on to the next segment. Stay tuned as we come back with the next segment.